VHS Files contains spoilers, adult content, and harsh language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's showtime.
Welcome to the VHS Files Podcast with Jenny Lou,
So what do you want to do tonight?
Jason,
What about pizza and movie night?
Eric,
I want to rent a movie.
and Josh.
I want to go to a good video store so I can get a good movie.
And this is the movie of the week.
Get this pizza movie night started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Yay, we're back.
And if you've heard,
Jason's back.
Jason is back. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Jason,
I'm back. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm alive among the living.
Back from the brink.
He survived the Rona.
Yes, the C19 is out of the system. Yay! I don't recommend it, children. Don't go out and lick door handles. Not a good idea.
Or
Don't-
toilets.
Jason learned that the hard
yeah.
way.
Way too many. I mean, I can't help it. I mean, it's a habit. I just like to lick a door handle every now and then. It's
Delicious.
I love the taste of stainless steel on my tongue. I can't help it. But yeah, I'm back. And thanks to you three guys for checking on me all the time, making sure I was okay and among the living. Thank you, all three of you guys. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, man.
Of course. We're worried about you, buddy.
So welcome to episode 18. And I guess officially our first show of the new year. I mean, we did kick it off with the Die Hard, but technically we recorded that in December. But we're coming to you from 2021 with a great movie and all that good stuff. We welcome to Jason back. Tonight we're going to be doing our movie of the week, so let's get to it.
The movie of the week.
This week is John Carpenter's The Thing. Some more John Carpenter for us. We've already talked about Halloween. We're all very big John Carpenter fans here, so we're very excited to be talking some more Carpenter. A little bit of background here. This was coming right after he had done The Fog and Escape from New York. He had worked with Kurt Russell previously on the Elvis movie, which was a made-for-TV movie that he did with Kurt Russell, and worked with him again on Escape from New York, and then he came over to this. Not going to go into a whole lot of John Carpenter, what he did, because we're going to get to all the stuff that John Carpenter did in the future, but I do want to bring up that this is, I think, the second time he worked with the effects guy, Rob Bottin, who worked on this. And The Thing is known for its creature effects. I really wanted to bring him up and talk about this. His first time working with Carpenter was on The Fog. He had worked on The Howling previous as well, which has one of the best werewolf transformation scenes in film history, in my opinion.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Notably 5 months before Baker's in
American Werewolf, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean,
he worked with Baker before that.
right. So he was kind of I don't know if you would call him an apprentice of Baker's, but they worked together, kind of had the same style. You can definitely tell the difference between their makeup, but
Totally different.
So, I mean, we can talk about that when we do finally talk about The Howling and American Werewolf in London, about how different those styles are and how that transformation scene goes down. But he would go on to do all kinds of stuff in Hollywood as far as makeup effects go. From here, he works on Inner Space with Dennis Quaid and Martin Short, one of my favorite 80s comedies as a kid. Worked on RoboCop, Total Recall, some of the, I mean, I can, after learning that he worked on Total Recall, I can definitely see his work in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you just even look at any of the films that he was involved in, you definitely see his style through every movie, like the gooiness and some of the Recall alien monsters, and even in Legend.
The aliens in Total Recall and the mutants as well. Like there's a lot of this similar.
And even stuff that was a little reserved, like he worked on Seven, did some of the makeup effects in that, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So that was a little bit of a, more of a head trip sort of style stuff for that. And he most
did the
recently
worked
in
Mimic too. And you think about the creature that he's created in the thing. Look at what he did with Mimic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that was crazy.
And I mean, he's still working. I mean, he's worked as soon as he worked on Game of Thrones when Game of Thrones was on as well. So very very well known in the Hollywood business. This movie is probably a lot of his contribution to this movie is probably a lot of the reason why he got the work he did. I mean, the creature effects in this movie are amazing.
And they hold up.
Oh,
still.
yeah.
They hold up all the way to now. Like, there's nothing I would change about any of it. It looks so good.
1982.
Even the stop motion stuff looks good.
We'll talk about a couple of things coming up, but yeah, I'm right there along with you. The thing was released June 25th of 1982 on a budget of $15 million. Came in with a box office of $19.6 million. This was a bomb, guys. The thing was considered a Hollywood bomb.
Well, it was competing with I think around the time was that people were like wanting movies like E.T. and stuff like that. But
this was released amongst the likes of Poltergeist, E.T., Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and was released the same day as Blade Runner.
I was about to say Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you had a lot of competition around this time in the theaters, and whether or not it was just something that everybody passed up. I heard that this got panned pretty bad with the critics as well back at that time.
Oh, yeah. I got a thing here. It says it was reviewed as instant junk, a wretched excess, proposed to be the most hated film of all time when it was released. And here we are talking about how much we love it.
Yeah.
So screw you, Siskel and
I
Ebert.
guess it was before its time.
Well, everything goes in somewhat of a cycle in Hollywood. We're seeing it now with Star Wars because people hated the prequels so much, and now they've done the sequels to the original trilogy, and they're like, all the prequels were so much better. Like, over time, things tend to change, and this was one of those movies where it just took some time for people to come around on it, because if you really look at this movie, it is something to behold in Hollywood, in my opinion, just for the effects in general. But there's a lot to this movie other than the effects as well. So, but being that this came out in 1982, we're going to throw it over to Eric. Tell us what was cool back in 1982.
We're sending you back in time. Whoa, this is heavy.
Yep.
Well, Josh, in 1982, the Epcot theme park opened to the public. One time I was buying a beer in the Germany section of Epcot, and the cashier said, $9, please. I was like, whoa, free beer. It's a German joke. It's a German joke. 9.
Yeah.
I know it didn't come out in 1982, but that would have been a perfect joke for the Die Hard episode, Eric.
Yeah.
Yes. Time Magazine's Person of the Year was given to The Computer, which was the first time in its history it was awarded to a non-human. It's only been awarded to one non-human since then, when Mark Zuckerberg won it in 2010. Because he's robotic. I'm going to explain my jokes. Okay. And then Ozzy Osbourne bites the head off a bat on stage in Des Moines, Iowa. Apparently he thought it was fake at the time.
Found out the hard way it was.
And finally, if you were watching the ABC Sunday Night Movie in 1982, you might get a commercial break like this one. Hit it, Josh.
Since 1975, lettuce is up 61%.
Hey, that's a lot of cabbage.
Mushrooms,
That's a lot of cabbage.
grapes, 82%.
It's fruitless.
In today's economy, you need Ziploc storage bags. With their unique seal, Ziploc bags are a zip to lock, and they stay locked, so foods stay fresher longer.
What's up, Doc?
Carrots, 138%.
Oh, no.
Ziploc storage bags. There's
bugs.
no better way to
All right,
protect
that's
your
enough.
investment.
That's enough of that. In this economy, you need Ziploc storage
Yeah.
bags. I love that that sales pitch.
You still need Ziploc storage bags.
Yeah.
Does anyone know what Epcot stands for?
Oh, I used to, but no.
Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Or if you're a bus driver at Walt Disney World, every person comes out tired.
It's a good one.
Or the fact that the ride that's usually inside the big sphere is always broke down.
It's going away.
Yeah,
I thought it
heard
was-
that.
I thought it was
shame.
becoming some Guardians of the Galaxy thing. or
That's in
something.
another part of it.
Oh, well.
It's bigger on the inside.
That's what she said.
Okay.
I want to go ahead and play the trailer for The Thing, and then we can get started talking about this later.
Men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? He can beat one of those things!
Actually a pretty cool trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows a lot. You know, people talk about trailers showing too much these days, but the more we watch these old trailers,
That
the more
one
I'm
did
like,
show
what the
a
hell,
lot.
dude?
Yeah, some of them. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, the whole Kurt Russell giving his speech kind of tells you what the whole movie's about.
Yeah. I mean,
And they show a lot of the effects in there too, like kind of letting the cat out of the bag a
Right.
little bit.
well, I know this was a later movie for me, so does anybody have any early memories of watching The Thing? I'll start with Jason, since he's the giant horror hound.
No, The Thing to me was definitely a rental later. I don't remember like my mom or stepdad wanting to watch this. I was probably definitely in my teenage years. It was one of the cool movies in the horror section that you go, what in the world is it? But you look on the back and you see Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
You know, and at this point I'd seen Kurt Russell in other movies. And so I watched this movie and then I realized, holy crap, this is one of the grossest movies I'd ever seen, right next to The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're right there together as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there are some definitely more gooey, nasty parts in The Fly, but yeah, this was definitely a later movie. But again, like we've talked about before, going into the horror, looking at the boxes, you know, the artwork and stuff, and you look on the back and you see one of the actors that you see in regular movies, and you're like, he did a horror movie? Let's check this out. So
yeah, the box art for this movie is definitely a striking image.
Yeah, the guy in the parka.
Yeah, with the beam coming out of his face. Forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think between me, Jenny, and Eric, I think we're all relatively newcomers to The Thing. Am I wrong in assuming that?
I probably didn't see it until I was with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I probably didn't see it till I was in high school.
Yeah, I know I had seen bits and pieces of it when I was younger, but this was never one that I sat and watched all the way through. I would catch it here and there, didn't know a ton about it. And it wasn't until I started getting into movies a little later in life that Carpenter movies started to stand out to me. So I had no idea this was a John Carpenter movie until, probably in the last 10 years when I really started getting into film. And it's like that with a lot of John Carpenter stuff, to be honest. Like Memoirs of an Invisible Man, I didn't know he directed that. And I'm really anxious to go back and watch it now because I remember watching it a lot as a kid.
Chevy Chase does a great job in that movie too. He's a little outside of himself usually. If it was normal.
I remember it being a little reserved for a Chevy Chase movie at that time. But this one is one of those that once I found out Carpenter did it, it kind of fell into that category of, oh, well, there's a big debate on what your favorite Carpenter movie is or what the best Carpenter movie is. Seeing Halloween as many times as I did, Halloween was always just if you want to talk Carpenter, it's Halloween for me. And there was a podcast that I brought up on the show before that Eric and I listened to a lot called Film Junk. They kind of got my brain working a little bit about The Thing because it's one of their hosts' favorite John Carpenter movies. And it made me want to go back and revisit it and kind of see, once I started really getting into watching movies again, I really wanted to go back and start watching these directors' movies from the beginning and kind of seeing their evolution in filmmaking. it's so funny. Like even Christine, it never dawned on me that it was a John Carpenter directed movie. Watching it now,
John Carpenter across the top.
Well, you're not paying attention to that kind of stuff when you're a kid, but yeah, I mean, but watching Christine now, it is hard to deny that is a John Carpenter movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh, definitely.
You really start to see the DNA in the movies when certain filmmakers are making them. You also start to see repeat actors, which is another thing that John Carpenter is very known for.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, this is one here, case in point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite movies growing up was Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep. Again, one of my favorites as a kid. Did not realize it was a Carpenter movie until later in life.
Yeah, and you realize kind of John Carpenter kind of started a lot of that. We're using the same actors in movies because he started it in the 70s, and then you got people like Tarantino that make their movies, and it's a lot of the same guys. Because I think these directors realize, like, if I can get along with these guys and they're going to do what I want, and they got the chops, I'm just going to keep putting them in my movies and make my life easier and make good movies.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that happens in other businesses as well. It's who you know. It's you hire people that you trust, and so they end up working together multiple times. And Kurt Russell is a goddamn legend.
Oh yeah.
Just watching this, like, I'm just like, God damn, that dude. What an epic career, dude. Like, just thinking of the later stuff he's done, somewhat recently, and just
he kicks ass as Santa, man.
He does. Indeed, he does.
I have not subjected myself to the Santa Chronicles. You did watch it?
I watched
it.
Hey,
part one is good. Part
I
two,
didn't watch the second one.
I didn't even make it a quarter through.
No,
I shut it up. But the first one, he does a great job as Santa, man.
That's kind
of
it's
funny.
Yeah. He's so likable.
It's funny. He has that big beard. And I read a note for this movie when Kurt Russell was doing it. It took him a year to grow that beard. Before he shot, it took him a whole year to grow that beard just so he could play the role of McCready.
It looks good, though.
I love his look in this movie too. I love his whole vibe in this movie. He looks so awesome, and I love his big
fucking hat, man.
Dude, I want that hat. Since I was a kid, I wanted that hat.
I mean, talk about like a prop from a movie that would be awesome to have. That hat would be amazing. Hanging on your wall.
I bet you he has it. We need to get a hold of Kurt Russell. Get him on the phone, Eric, and see if he has that hat on the wall.
Well, it's funny you mentioned it, Jason. I should introduce our guest for this evening, Kurt Russell.
He was definitely a repeat guy that I saw in movies as a kid. He worked his way into some of my, I was a Stallone and a Schwarzenegger fan. He worked his way into Tango and Cash. And then from there, like Overboard was a really big part of my movie watching as a kid.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
And he's also the star of probably my favorite, and I still will argue with you that the best Western ever, Tombstone. Dude, Kurt Russell kills it in that movie, man. That mustache he has is legendary. That movie.
I think all the facial hair.
Captain Ron. Can we got some Captain Ron fans?
Yeah, dude. Yes.
Hell yeah.
Never seen Captain Ron.
What? You haven't seen the movie?
Get that going.
Yep. So
Captain Ron next week. Hey, let's do the whole year
just Kurt Russell movies. We could probably. It's 52 weeks in a year. He's done 52 movies easy. We could fill it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he started out as a Disney kid, so he did Disney movies back in the older days. So.
That's right. I do want to see his the John Carpenter movie that he did, and he played Elvis. I'd like to see that. I haven't watched it yet. That's probably the only John Carpenter movie I don't own, to be honest with you.
But there's one thing, I know we need to get in to talk about the movie, but the main thing that we all know about John Carpenter is his scores for the movies, but he didn't do the music for this movie.
No, that's one thing I really did want to bring up, and that I noticed watching it this time around for sure. It starts out, like, we'll go ahead and get into to when the movie opens up in this just white landscape. They're in Antarctica, and it's a beautiful setting for a movie, especially for a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that kind of heartbeat score coming in right from the beginning, and
which is very Carpenter. I mean,
very much so.
It feels like the beginning of Precinct 13 to me, or something. Like just that bump,
and I think and I think that's why people might either get confused, or even like me, like I had this notion that it was a very Carpenter synth heavy score in The Thing, because that's that's probably the first thing that comes to mind when you think of this movie. But watching it, there are a lot of orchestral string moments in this that are not very Carpenter-esque.
Yeah, it's like they put some synth in there.
There are a couple of key points where there are like a synthy score, but the rest of it is very string driven.
Yeah. And it's and how do you pronounce the guy's name? Because I mean, he's super famous.
Ennio Morricone.
Carpenter.
And the guy, and this guy is like known for speaking of westerns, for writing the Ecstasy of Gold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and which also happens to be how Metallica opens every concert with that same thing. But
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly score.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did Django?
Django, yep. Or no,
Hateful Eight.
He did Hateful Eight. He didn't do Django.
Yeah, he did. I got it right here. Django Unchained.
He won the Oscar for Hateful Eight.
Yeah, I think so. Did he?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Well, the guy is a great composer, and like you said, it's weird that we all know John Carpenter for doing his movies or are involved with his music, but then we have top notch. Composer here writing the music for that. But I think it's what he did is maybe he took away his style and then he's watched, like Halloween and stuff. And he's like, how about I just kind of mesh the two? And that was 82 is when, the whole synthesizer thing was really kicking off. And I think that's what he kind of did was took some old and some new and made the score for this.
Well, I think Carpenter did work on some aspects of it. I think there is some stuff that he put in there.
Oh, I would not doubt it. Yeah.
I think Carpenter would have jumped at the opportunity to work with Ennio Morricone because he's a Western fanatic. John Carpenter says, he's if you watch his movies, you can tell like he's drawing inspiration from Western movies.
I mean, that's an important reference as well, because this is also a remake or a reimagining of the
thing from another world.
The thing from another world,
which honestly is a lot of what made Carpenter not want to work on this. He didn't think he would be able to hold up or do something that would hold up to the Howard Hawks film.
Right. I think we also need to give a nod to old Bill Lancaster for writing the screenplay, because this movie's so tight. The screenplay is so wonderfully written, and it's not a simple thing. There's some complexity to this, and Josh, you've been ribbing old Nolan for his exposition and things like that as of late in these complicated kind of concept films that he does, and it requires a lot of explanation because the concept's so complex, but like there's some complexity here and it's all done very naturally.
Yes, you're very right. This isn't like Nolan hitting you over the head with what you're about to be watching. You really get to see this unfold naturally before your eyes. And even the exposition they give you is really just the characters finding out what we don't even know. It's which, I mean, I guess they're doing the same thing in a Nolan film, but it just seems to be so heavy-handed in those kind of movies, where here it is very reserved. It is very, a step back from just complete telling you what's going on. You're finding out as soon as they know. You don't really have any more of an explanation than what they're presenting to you.
And I think I think when you have a nicely organized story as well, this thing is under 2 hours.
I think it has a lot going for it in the fact that it's a single location. It's a very small cast. I think there are 10 people in the cast maybe. And they don't have a ton of things to have to, they don't have a ton of stuff to throw at the wall and hope it sticks. You've got 10 people to deal with. You've got one setting to deal with and one problem.
And you don't get a lot of information outside of what's going on either.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know why that, base is there, what they do. You got to as you follow along, you realize, okay, this guy's a doctor, this guy's the commander, this guy's a pilot. You kind of can start figuring out who does what for the most part, but it's not really important. We don't get
and it brings up questions throughout the movie that we never get answered. I mean, it's a research facility, an American research facility, but what are they researching? We don't know. Why the fuck do they have dynamite? We don't know.
They have a lot of
dynamite. And that and flares.
Yeah.
Holy crap! How many flares did they use in this?
Now,
movie?
flares I could understand in a blackout or a whiteout or whatever. I mean, but like I the only reason I would really want to know more about this base is because I'd like to know what the hell they got so much dynamite for. But we don't get any of that.
I mean, you can only assume that they're using it to crack open the ice and
research stuff.
Well, not only layers of ancient
Well, it's the fact that they're in Antarctica. I mean, it's the U.S. facility, and then you had the Norwegians, which is how we start the movie off, is with the Norwegian helicopter chasing a dog across the snow.
Yeah,
and that's the whole thing. Like, they're over there doing their thing. Obviously, we find out later what happened, but that's how the whole opening thing is, just chasing a dog across the snow, and you're like, and the first time you watch this movie is like, why the hell are they trying to kill a dog?
The ambiguity this movie starts on is what makes it really riveting, because all you see is this helicopter shooting at a dog, and your first instinct, especially me and Jenny and Eric and probably Jason, being a dog lover, is what the hell is this guy shooting at this dog for?
Yeah.
You are rooting for that dog. You're like, and what a switcheroo. They pull the rug right out from under you. That's the last thing you should be watching.
Exactly. But
they're terrible shots.
Yeah.
They're in a helicopter.
Well, I mean,
they seem like they get pretty
they're at a research facility. They're
not
snipers.
I'm willing to let the shooting go by the wayside for the fact that they're in a helicopter and all of that mess. But the sheer fact that the guy lets the grenade slip out of his hand when he goes to throw it is laughable.
Oh, dude. That's just like
it's icy, man. It's slippery. Leave him alone.
The window was open on the helicopter, dude. It's like 50 below. He's like frostbit in the hands.
I never noticed before this though that the helicopter pilot is the one who attempts to throw the grenade, and the other guy's already on the ground shooting. I don't know why I never really picked up on that before, but
I was still focusing on the dog.
It's also important to mention that this movie actually opens on the spaceship.
Yeah.
Which we can assume is from 100,000 years ago when the ship came down.
Well, we already knew it was 100,000 years ago because that's what they told us in the trailer that we would have saw
told us in the trailer
before the movie.
I also find it kind of odd that they're in the middle of Antarctica. This guy comes in and starts shooting, and now naturally you would want to protect yourself. There is someone there, I guess, that is deputized, has a gun, but breaks the window out of the place just to shoot the guy. It's like, dude, you're in Antarctica. You got to keep this place sealed up, but you're just going to bust the window out? Seems a little ridiculous, but...
Well, I mean, he didn't want that guy to kill all of them.
And he's a good shot, dude. Yeah,
I made
a pistol.
I made a mental note to myself at anything that I bring up in this movie, how Eric was going to rebuttal against it.
I will defend this movie irrationally. You're right, Josh. You're right.
So we're gonna have.
It's gonna be happening the whole time. You say you criticize this movie, I'm gonna jump on you.
But we brought up the dogs. In the midst of all of this, one of our guys in the American research facility gets shot in the leg. They take out the guy right between the eyes.
Well, I said, dude, cracked shot with that pistol from that far away.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they decide
lucky shot. Lucky shot.
They've got their sled dogs there all up in a kennel. They see this dog. There's a guy there who is apparently the dog wrangler, who's very Clark, who is, very attached to the dogs, takes the dog in where he's right there along with all of us. We don't know why they're shooting at this dog. We just.
Sure. We would all do the same thing. We would take the dog in.
They bring up a point later as to why it wasn't put directly into the kennel with the rest of the dogs, and he tells them, it was just wandering around the compound. He didn't really think about it, because you see that happening. You're not really thinking about the fact of a dog being a threat. Even though you see people shooting at
the dog is a crazy alien.
Right. It's like they could have figured that maybe the dog attacked one of their guys or something, and he was, let's go shoot the dog. Maybe he's got rabies or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing. I mean, you got to think logical. I mean, they're out in the middle of Antarctica. That would be the only logical thing, is like the dog probably attacked somebody and they're trying to put it down.
Yeah.
You're not thinking that it's got some kind of, like Eric said, shape-shifting alien inside of it.
I do want to say, since we are talking about the dog, some of the best acting in this movie is from that dog.
Dude, that dog's facial expressions are just like, it's the stare and then the kind of, hey.
Yeah, like it moves very slowly. Like there's one section where it's coming out from out of a doorway and it's moving very slow, like it's being methodical.
Mm-hmm.
Just that dog really acts well.
Yeah, I wrote down, is it weird to say this dog is a good actor?
I don't think so.
No, he's really good.
He really sells it. And we see him moving throughout the compound, and I love that shot where he walks into a room and you just see a silhouette. You have no idea who it is. So I wanted to get everybody's opinion. Like, who do we think is patient zero here?
Well,
besides the dog?
Besides the dog. Like, where does the dog infiltrate the camp?
The guy that has... I think the patient zero is either, and I'm forgetting their names. Hold on, let me pull this up. So I think
it was either Palmer
or Vance Norris.
Norris is who I am.
Yeah,
because
that shadow looks like
the
Norris.
silhouette looks exactly like Norris.
Mm-hmm.
So and I don't know if you realize who Norris is. I don't know if you.
I can't remember.
He's the guy who has like he's the guy who has a heart attack, and then
he's that guy.
He was the guy from Dante's Peak. That's the only.
That's
the only movie I remember him from. Is that?
That's the magic that Jason brings to this podcast right here. He's the guy from Dante's Peak.
He dies too.
That's really where my fascination for what's going on in this movie comes from. Is where it starts and how it actually moves through the camp.
It keeps you guessing from start to finish, and you can really, dissect the movie after the fact, and there's still questions leading up to the very end, which we'll get to. But it is a wonderfully crafted mystery,
right?
In its own
just right from the beginning, because we're like, why is this dog wandering around? But I mean, like you said, because the acting of the dog, it starts to make you wonder, what the hell is wrong with this dog?
Yeah.
It looks smarter than it is. It looks smarter than a dog
it's definitely
should be.
smarter because they send, what's his name? Dr. Oh God, I forgot his name. Oh,
Copper.
Wilford Brimley, Dr. Blair?
The Copper, because Copper wants to go check out the Norwegian place.
Mm-hmm.
Him and McCready go over there and check that out. And, we talk about how smart the dog is. And we get to the camp, it's on fire and all that stuff. And they're checking all this, like something crazy's gone there. There's holes blown in the wall, stuff's still on fire. And they find the video unit. But the thing is, I thought like they walk out there and McCready's like, hey, Doc, check this out. And we see like the ice coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like something was in this block of ice.
Mm-hmm.
What a cool visual.
That was great. I mean, because it's huge. So, something huge was inside of it.
And this movie is often compared to Alien.
I can understand the comparison for sure.
Yeah. And they're two of my favorite movies. They're both definitely in my top 5, maybe even top 3. And
we know Die Hard's in the top 3, so that doesn't leave a whole lot of options there.
So
that's fine. I'm comfortable with those.
So Die Hard, The Thing, and Alien. There you go.
Very comfortable.
Good.
I'm very comfortable with that. But I don't like to really pick, but yeah, I mean but this feels a little like Alien when they are inspecting, a place that has been destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the block of ice, which reminds me of the what do they call them in Alien?
Xenomorphs?
The body. No, the body they find of the alien.
The cocoon?
What do they call? No, the body of the alien, not the xenomorph.
Oh no. Okay, the engineer.
What do they call him? Yeah, the engineer or whatever. So, you find this sort of and it's sort of a parasitic almost sort. It's not, the thing isn't parasitic, but there are some similarities there about the structure of things.
Yes. What I find very interesting visually and storytelling wise about this is, as they're going through this compound that's been burnt down, you're getting a story throughout it, because they walk down a hallway and there's an axe in the wall. They go into
a bloody axe.
Yeah, bloody axe. They go into a room and there's a frozen man dead with blood pouring out of his wrist because he slit his wrist.
Frozen blood.
That's really cool.
Love the blood sickles.
Dude, that's
blood sickles are dope.
Talking about the special effects, just that.
Yeah.
That guy, and his neck has been cut open too.
Yeah,
his neck and his
wrist.
It's like holy moly.
But the part I like is when you go through all that, and then when they go outside and they see the remains of something burned, dude, that the first time I saw this movie, and you could see the twisted face and the arms and all that stuff in the snow, you're like, whoa, what is this?
It's where we really get our first glimpse at the makeup effects in this.
And I love the way they shoot this, and other times where they have like the autopsy scene and things like that. They shoot it. You never get like a real good straight on like shot of it. It's always sort of panning across kind of at an angle. You can't quite make sense of it because it's a big mixture of limbs and faces. And it's just like the fact that they never give you a real straight look at it. You kind of get a straighter look at the end, but it's confusing. You don't know what to make of it. I love that the monster is not talk about like a creature design. It's like it's everything and nothing. It's so disturbing looking because it doesn't make any sense to us. It doesn't look like a creature. And this is where it differs from Alien, where Alien is so meticulously, a xenomorph is so meticulously designed. So beautifully designed, and it's like perfection in a sense, you know. And this is the opposite. This is just like
this
chaos.
is very different from the monsters of the 80s that we got from the 80s, like Alien with the xenomorph, Predator. With the whatever that's called, the Predator, and where they're very clearly defined creatures. Whereas this was, I think that may have been something that turned people off about the thing is you never really got the sense of what it was or what it looked like or anything. I think.
Well, you don't get an iconic character like the xenomorph or an iconic, something that's marketable.
Yeah.
There's nothing marketable about the creature from the thing because it's just a big mess of yuck.
Even though some of my favorite collector's items that I have are the 3 NECA figures they put out of the thing monster. They're great. They're highly detailed, and I think the spider head is really the
that's
draw.
The most memorable one, I do believe. Yeah. Other than the dog.
Well, that's really where it starts to, they get back from the Norwegian place and they start going through all this paperwork and figuring out what it was that they found, and they just get maps and everything's in Norwegian, so they don't know what they're reading. They just know that they've been looking, researching things.
Well, they saw the ship too on that.
Well,
trip.
they see the video them marking it off. They actually go back on that's one thing that I found. It's weird how many times they go back and forth in this. It seemed to me the first time I watched it, like that was all one thing together, and they make multiple trips. And I guess it's because the weather is so bad. The first time they go, they don't want to be out too long because the weather's about to get pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, the part that I mentioned earlier started, and I was going to get there, was talking about how smart the dog is. Let's talk about how stupid these two are for bringing back something they found in the snow that doesn't even look human. Let's just take it back to camp. Hey, it's cool.
Well, they're research based. Their whole point is to research things. So that's probably the most interesting thing they've ever seen.
And I guess Blair, Mr. Wilford Brimley, Mr. Diabetes, is I guess he's the scientist of the crew. We were talking earlier, Josh, like you said, you got this guy that probably does this, a doctor, the scientist, the cop or guy who does all that. And that's the thing we would figure is, we learn later that this thing works at contact. So was Blair contaminated from the very first time he touched the thing, even though he's got gloves on? There's still some.
There is a moment where he pokes the thing with his pencil,
and then touches his face.
And then as he's talking, he touches his face with the back of the pencil.
That.
Yeah.
So he could be, that could be the moment.
There are people that claim that is where he was infected. We're going to get into it as we go on.
That feels like a fan theory though to me, but I don't think it doesn't seem like that was an intentional thing. I think that was probably just Wilford Brimley acting.
True. Now,
does anybody think that Wilford Brimley without a mustache just looks wrong?
Yes, it is so wrong. He has to have the mustache.
You could almost not realize it was Wilford.
Well, that's only because we're from the Cocoon era.
Yeah.
And we had to go back to see this and thinking that we would never see Wilford Brimley in a movie before that. And lo and behold, here he is.
Did you ever watch, was it Our House? Is that what it was called on
no,
TV?
Maybe.
Yeah, that TV show.
Tell me, Jason.
Our House.
That's right.
And he was on the
I think it's called Our House.
And he was on the Waltons. So
and Walker, Texas Ranger, man. I used to see him on that all the time too.
But I remember, but you talking about the main movie you're remembering from is Cocoon.
Yeah.
Especially from that time of our childhood. So, but then we go and they're telling Clark, go put the damn dog up, dude, because I guess the dog is freaking everybody out, because him walking around and things going on. It's like, go put the dog with the other dogs.
I don't think it's that it was freaking them out. I think it was just there's a dog walking around the compound. There's usually not a dog walking around. And
I think
again,
one of the guys trips over the dog and he says, "Hey, put the dog up."
Yeah. And I feel so bad watching this scene because,
it's terrible.
all these dogs all of them don't. I originally thought that all the dogs got.
I think 2 of them get out.
Yeah, 2 of them escape before any real harm comes to them, but we find out later that they do meet their fate. And but this is really where shit goes crazy. And
we should talk about this effect,
dude,
because
just
the tendrils that come out.
What are those?
I mean, they look.
Well, also just like the splitting, like whenever things split.
When that dog's head splits open in 4 different ways, like a flower almost.
And you can see the skull of the dog underneath it. You're like,
yeah, the way this thing splits open and just has like, oh, now it's a mouth. You got a mouth coming out of a chest. You got a head splitting into a mouth. Like none of it makes any sense. It's all asymmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like weird, like abstract ideas that don't. There's no consistency to it. It's just completely bizarre. Every time you don't know what you're going to get.
I just want to know how much LSD they took when they designed these creatures. They had to be on.
It is trippy. And dude, those like flipping tendrils, I love that look when they're just flapping around. It just looks so unnatural. So like unearthly.
Yeah.
And then it's squirting.
And you get those again in you get something like that again in The Mouth of Madness.
That's another one I've only seen a couple of times, but I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean there's some like little tendrils that come out of kind of like a weird monster in a moment in that movie, but
this thing
is so creepy.
This thing starts to grow in size instantly and engulfs some of these dogs. I like that you bring up the flippity floppity whatever they are, the tendrils. But you also see the ones that kind of like reach out and grab and wrap around the dog and bring it towards.
Yep.
It also spits something on one of the dogs.
That's what I was talking about. Just like squirting the stuff all over it. And then you kind of see the dog later and it's like dissolving the dog.
Yeah.
And he pulls it and it pulls it into it to assimilate it.
I feel bad for that dog when they spray it with that glue.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no. I feel a little bad for him.
He's biting at the
chewing
cage,
through the fence,
through the wire. Like, it's so awful to watch. And Clark is there, like, and they can't do anything. And they're his dogs. Like,
it has the one that's all like that it's taking, and I think McCready shoots it. And even then, like, he's just freaking out because these are his dogs, and I would be right there with him.
Yeah, McCready just shot my dog, man.
Yeah, but I mean, the dog's pretty much dead at that point. I mean, it's got these things wrapped around it trying to take it in. It's the dogs, but it sucks. But I mean, even then, like when they show up, they get Childs to bring the flamethrower.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, that thing like sticks his hands up into the ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
like it's going to try to go up, and then they grab, and then that's when Child shows up and they burn it down.
Well, I think we kind of get a sense of what this thing has imitated thus far here, because
I think so. Yeah,
you've got the arms, and then as you look, when Childs comes in to set it up to set it ablaze, you see almost like human eyes, and then it opens up, and that damn whatever it is comes out and goes for him, and that's when he lights
Feed
it up.
me, Seymour.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like. Little shop of horrors coming out of it.
Yeah, another thing, you gotta wonder is the ship that came down, was the creature, the thing, was that like a hijacked ship from another
You got to
race,
think about that.
Right? They don't really say, but Probably, right? It was probably hijacked, in the same way that, the thing becomes Blair, and Blair tries to make a ship to fly away. I just wonder, when you see some of this stuff that doesn't look like humans, or, like the spider stuff and all that kind of stuff, like, is this DNA that this thing has picked up off planet before it even got here? You know what I mean?
Like the alien ship could have been a friendly ship just flying through space, and then this thing got out of containment.
Just like the engineer, man. Just like the
engineer. And that's why it crashed on Earth, because the thing it took over, nobody could fly the ship, and then the ship crashed in the Antarctica.
Well, I didn't want to get too into bringing it up because, there's a lot of debate over, this movie, and a lot of people were upset that they even made this. It was labeled as a remake, but it's really just the prequel to this, which is the 2011 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Has everybody seen it?
I have.
Yes.
The prequel is good.
The only thing I hold against the prequel is all the CGI effects. I hate the CGI effects, but the way that prequel runs basically right into this movie, they did a great job.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of the background of some things that you're questioning in this movie. It kind of does what I was hoping Prometheus was going to do for the Alien franchise, whereas they set up the engineer and the ship, and I thought by the end of Prometheus we would have where we pick up in Alien. They actually do that in the remake or the reboot of this in 2011. And I like that they took the time and really told the story of what happened in that. And they even so much as show you those scenes as MacReady and the doctor going through that base. You see everything that happens in that movie as they walk through it.
Yeah. And it ends with them chasing the dog off. It ends right into the beginning of this. I want to point out the pilot of the ship in Alien is known as the space jockey.
Yeah,
that's what I
That's
think
it.
of.
Yeah.
They ended up being the engineer
Later. Yep.
Later, but yeah, there's definitely some comparisons to be made with those two films, and they're both so good. And it's so funny to put two really high concept sci-fi movies next to each other, and they're just. If you had to make me pick, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
It's really
They
hard.
both have, this one definitely holds the gore factor compared to Alien, in my opinion. And like we were talking about earlier, the Alien in Alien is a lot more refined, where this is a lot more ambiguous. And
right. They're not trying to do the same thing. They're doing two different things, but they just do it so well. Yeah. But there are enough parallels where they're just constantly being compared to each other.
And
they come out in pretty close proximity to each other.
And Jason brought up earlier the autopsy that Blair does on what they bring back from the Norwegian site, and he goes through and he finds normal human organs and stuff in there, so they're completely baffled by what this is. Now that this has happened, we get our autopsy of the dogs. And I want to play the clip of Wilford Brimley kind of explaining what he finds here.
You see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other life forms, and it imitates them perfectly.
There's the pencil.
When this thing attacked our dogs, it tried to digest them, absorb them.
There he goes. He touched his mouth. Yep.
To imitate them.
Don't touch your face.
Come on, buddy.
That's not dog. It's imitation. We got to it before it had time to finish.
Finish what?
Finish imitating these dogs.
Dun dun dun. Look,
I love that shot.
Oh my God, that bone structure or whatever it is.
Can it imitate multiple dogs? Like, it can imitate multiple.
Yeah. We see it in the movie be split into multiple, like when the guy's head comes off. So, you're not necessarily dealing with just one thing here. You could have multiple. They don't really address that in the film, but you see it, same with the blood. You take the blood out. He talks about that. He says, you take the blood out and now the blood tries to survive. So this thing could be, every drop of blood that the thing drips
be something.
be another another monster?
Well, I mean, they kind of get into that later
he does
with
the math.
With the blood test.
With the blood test, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And Blair does the math with his computer. I don't know how his computer can do this, but
yeah, that's not how computers work. But don't worry about it.
It's a pretty terrible simulation.
It would be. It says 27,000 hours.
3.08 years.
Yeah, 3 years about to take over the world.
That's crazy.
I'm like,
yeah. Let me just open my. How quickly does this take to open the world program on my 1982 computer? That'll do a simulation of. Yeah, that's okay. Fine. I'll admit that's.
But even on that computer, it says that they figured that probably 75% of the crew at the place is probably already infected.
Yeah, that is interesting. Although I don't think that was accurate.
Right, I don't think it was either.
It wasn't at that point. But
it was probably more like 30% or something. But again, when I watched that, I was thinking of Mother on Alien.
Yeah.
And from Alien.
Well, it also brought me back to Ex Machina, which is a more recent movie. But it kind of has this. I mean, it's not someone taking over the world, but it's AI getting loose in the world. Like, it has that same kind of feel to me. I love Ex Machina. That's a great modern horror movie, if you ask me, or thriller, whatever you want to call it. Now, here's where I start to get a little fuzzy on everything, because Blair knows what's going on at this point. He's understanding that this thing's replicating. He asked Clark how long he was with the dog. How long was the dog loose in the compound?
Yeah.
Blair is aware. Blair knows that this is going to be something that can be bad. And then he goes through his simulation thing. And even Childs, I like Childs' comment on it. He's like, "Do you believe this voodoo bullshit, Blair?"
Which is funny coming from Keith David, who's the voodoo guy from Princess and the Frog.
Dr. Facilier.
Thank you, Jenny. I knew you'd.
I liked him better as Spawn in the animated series.
But this is where, like, Blair is so concerned about this thing getting out. It makes me really wonder when it assimilated Blair.
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly.
Which leads me to believe the pencil thing has some weight to it, because it could have taken time for that to evolve.
Since it didn't fully absorb him.
He does kind of like lose his mind. It's hard to say, because people do lose it out there in these, in isolation and stuff like that. But I mean, he, before he turns, at least, he sabotages the helicopter. He tries to stop them from being able to leave, because he clearly doesn't think, he destroys the radios and things like that. He's trying to stop the spread, but then he just kind of comes completely unglued.
Do you think that when he's doing that he is already the imitation?
That is the question.
Yeah.
Like, has he been assimilated already? Because we find out later, I don't want to get too far into it because I want to talk about it when it happens, but he's been busy after we find out he's been assimilated.
Very busy.
This is like Eric was saying, this movie is dense, because you don't really know where these points happen in this timeline.
Yeah.
So when Blair is having his...
That's what makes this movie so rewatchable for me.
Yeah.
Is that there are enough question marks that I can watch it 20th time and still be like, what about this? Like, you can really, kind of play with it and go, well, what if this person got it first? And there's enough ambiguity there that, it makes it rewatchable for me.
Yeah.
Well, before we're sitting here talking about that stuff, I want to talk about the scene with, was it Bennings and Windows, the redheaded guy that's kind of bald. When they're putting them, remember, they're making McCready leave his little place where he keeps his storage stuff, and they're putting the stuff in there. We actually get to see the first time when it starts to actually assimilate a person.
Yeah.
Because remember, they put it there because they think it's dead, because Blair hasn't told them yet. And then you start seeing, as Windows leaves the room, you start seeing the gooey stuff falling while Bennings is looking up on the shelf. And then when Windows comes back in the room, you see the blood on the floor, and then he looks over there, and here's at the end of the thing, and you see Bennings all here, and he's all gooey, and the things are all over him, and it's like it's pulling him into it. It's like that first time you actually get to see it do it to a person is kind of disturbing.
And it's interesting because that sequence there shows that they were right, that it does tear your clothes
Yeah.
off because he's shirtless in that thing, but when he runs outside and they catch him, he's got clothes.
Well,
on.
he's got a parka on. I was actually looking at that because I can't tell if he's got anything on under the parka.
But he didn't have a chance to put a parka on. He ran out the window and they chased him immediately.
Well, by the time they get into the storeroom and he's not there anymore, so he had a chance to at least get out, and he could have grabbed a coat on his way out the door.
I guess, but I
so now I'm the one explaining things. Eric's flipped his role on us.
No. That's not a problem I have. They say it tears your clothes off and then it simulates the clothes, which again is going to kind of come back later and at the end. But I think he's even creepier when he's sitting there in the snow and he's got those.
Well, that sound that he makes.
That's what I have in my note. I have that in my notes. The sound that it makes every time it gets caught or anything. You're like,
it's like just this guttural roar out of this kind of nerdy guy, with a cul-de-sac
and
haircut.
It's quite convenient that they corner him right there near the gas cans, so they're able to just knock those over quite conveniently and light him up on fire.
There's plenty of flammable and explosive stuff.
Well,
I think. Go ahead, Jenny.
They literally have multiple flamethrowers.
The characters in this movie are smart. They don't hesitate around this thing. Like the second that they see that he's, got whatever these hands are.
Yeah, his hands are all.
They're like, all right, light him up. Yeah. I mean, they don't even say, wait a minute, what if, there's none of that. Yeah, like in some other movies, you would have all this emotional back and forth about, can we kill this person? Is this a person? Is this an alien? What do we do? And it's like, nope, you got to go. Out.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that at this point, we're halfway through the film and a ton of shit has happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, so much has happened in the first half of this movie. It's
so much has happened and we still don't know much, which is
yeah, you're still really confused, but all this stuff has happened and it's just set up this wonderful mystery of like, oh shit, like what's going on. And I want to point out, because we're getting the characters of course are getting very paranoid right now, and paranoia is a big part.
Everybody's a suspect,
obviously. And you don't know who the thing is, and but the thing from Another World in 1951 was kind of dealing with like anti-communist paranoia back in that era, right? And then it's interesting watching this now, and because I think there's a lot of paranoia politically in our world right now. And
what are you talking about? It's peaceful.
Also, not just politically, but also with the pandemic, like being like the fear of being infected, the fear of not being able to trust your friends, when you're near them, like just being, not that you don't trust your friends, but you're just, this fear of infection it gives you. When I'm at the store, I'm trying to stay away from people, like dodge folks, and watching this kind of just kind of tapped into that. You just sort of feel
you can't lick just any door handle. You have to have a.
You can't lick door handles anymore, Jason. We've talked about this. I got you a door handle to lick at home.
And so we're talking about how so much has happened in this movie, yet you don't know a lot. And I think that's where this movie is so smart, is it gives you and the characters the information at the same time. So you know what they know. You don't know anything else. There's no little sneaky looks anywhere. You're pretty much just them experiencing it.
That's right. Yes. And when your own main character, when MacReady, who, is basically the main character of this film, he disappears for a portion of time, you start to question him. It's pretty wild. This movie establishes such a tone, and it's so bleak, and man, thinking of Alien is, I think tonally they're very similar.
Well, again, small group of people, isolated location. Yeah.
Right. And an infection that's spreading essentially. Much. But yeah, they're very similar in that regard, but just the mood and the tone. And I mean, there's parts of this movie where there's no score.
Yeah.
And it's just really quiet. And
Well, there's not even hardly a moment to breathe, little less like a sigh of like a grasp of laughter in this movie. You get a couple little chuckles here and there, but they don't even let you take that time to relax.
Yeah, not like in Alien where you get like, oh, we're all, waking up, we're like eating and, like all this stuff. It's just.
That's true. We're thrown
right
into this. We're thrown into this event immediately.
Yeah, you get a few little lines in there. Like, what's his name? Knowles. Who done threw their dirty drawers in the trash can in the kitchen?
Like to keep my kitchen clean.
Speaking of Knowles,
yeah,
the man is smart for bringing roller skates, man. I would be bopping around that thing in roller skates. What an idea. I love that. Like you're in the middle of the snow. You're stuck in this building all the time. Man,
they don't really establish what Palmer does.
Great idea.
Too much, but he does smoke a lot of weed.
Smoke a lot of weed. Yeah. A lot of weed. Like there's that part where they're watching the old video and he's like got one rolled and him and Childs are in there smoking.
Yeah. And
is he a pilot as well? Because
I think he might be a pilot because he says if McCready won't do it, I'll do it or something like that.
Well, who would want him flying around as much pot as he's smoking?
Well, I think that's why they reject his offer.
I don't know. McCready's been drinking pretty heavily throughout the film.
He just seems like he can handle it better.
This movie was sponsored by J&B, Smirnoff, and Chevron.
Yeah.
Because of all the kerosene and oil through this whole thing.
Well, let's talk some almost famous people.
Almost famous.
I know that, dude.
I don't know them.
I know her.
Haven't you ever heard of that guy? What's his name? That guy who was in that movie that was out last year.
All right, so
almost famous.
Not a very big cast here. My pick for this is definitely Keith David.
I think Keith David's too famous to be almost famous, but maybe I just know Keith David too well. He is great in this movie.
Yeah,
though.
he is.
I just want to say, like, he's awesome. I love Childs in this movie.
I like that he's always there to combat McCready in some way, which I don't know if he really has a good reason to do that other than just like nobody trusts anybody.
Yeah, they don't really say. I mean, you just have to assume they don't get along.
I don't know. My almost famous. I was gonna go with Knowles, TK Carter, because that guy had all these. He was in Punky Brewster like every episode when I was a kid. He was in Dr. Detroit with Dan Aykroyd. He was always that guy. He was even in Ski Patrol. He was like that guy in the 80s. He was always, the token black guy, I guess you'd call it, in the 80s movies, comedies. He was always there. So,
yeah, he was in a lot of stuff.
I mean, I remember him. I mean, it's just always doing that. But I would go with him or, like you said, Keith David. They're kind of, but I think Keith David's actually been in more stuff that he's known for.
Keith David's been in a lot of things, and I think, he was in The Nice Guys just recently.
Yeah. Yep. Does a lot of voiceover.
A lot of voiceover work. Yeah. Something About Mary. How the hell did you get the beans above the frying?
I'm going to go with Richard Macer.
I have him written down as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Clark. Yeah, License to Drive.
That's mine.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been in a ton of movies, ton of television.
Mr. Boogedy. Got to be his most famous role.
My Girl, Risky Business.
My Girl 2.
Like you said, License.
Encino Man.
Orange is the New Black. I mean, he's Mr. Robot. He's in more recent stuff too, but never really became a household name. Yep. So
when I see him, my first thing that I go to is License to Drive, the dad in that.
It's great.
And then My Girl. My Girl was he plays, I think, the uncle in that or something.
We need to talk about License to Drive soon.
Oh, I thought you were saying My Girl. But I can't handle that. That movie's scarred.
Can we take a break from Corey movies for at least 2 months?
I guess.
We haven't talked a Corey movie in a while.
Only because I wasn't here for the last 3 episodes. But before that, it seemed everything was a Corey movie for a while. I mean, no, we did Gremlins. Corey was in that.
Well, that was 3 movies ago, buddy.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, get with the program. Stop getting COVID.
Damn door handles.
I also wrote down Wilford Brimley, but I think everybody knows who Wilford Brimley is.
Dude, how many memes are still out there? Diabetes.
There were a couple other people in this that have been in things, but I really didn't write their names down.
Yeah, I would say my next one would be Donald Moffat.
Yeah, Gary,
Gary.
the older guy with the gun. Yeah, he's been in a few things.
Yeah.
Eyebrows.
He was in things. Yes, eyebrows. Yes,
he was in
yes.
Popeye.
Popeye, Clear and Present Danger, The Right Stuff.
Did anybody wonder why Windows' name was Windows?
I think it's the glasses.
Really? I don't know. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
That makes sense, Jason. I was thinking it was because he's like the communications guy. But
he's not very good at that.
Yeah,
but you think about it. They're in Antarctica. He's in the building and he's always wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going with that.
I like it. All right. So what did we agree on? To not agree on Almost Famous?
Well, I mean, Keith David has been in quite a bit of stuff. I think if anybody saw his face, they'd be like, they probably don't know his name, but they know they've seen him in a lot of things. I think Richard Masur would probably be more of what we gun towards during Almost Famous.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and I think the guy who plays Knowles might be a little too lesser known. Like a lot of the stuff that he would have been in would have been very niche and
would have been 80s and early 90s, and then he kind of disappeared.
Because I do remember seeing him in things, but not much after 80s movies and stuff.
But did y'all remember him from Punky Brewster? Did y'all watch Punky Brewster?
I watched Punky Brewster all the time. When you said that, I remembered him.
You remember him immediately because I told you that's where I remember him from all the time. That, and I love the movie Ski Patrol, and he was in it too. So nice 80s B comedy. So okay, and moving on.
Well, we left off that they have figured out that Bennings had been assimilated. They burnt him up. And they decide, okay, we've got to burn
it all.
We've got to burn everything. There's no way we're going to risk anything else. We're burning everything up. And I think it's very clever how they take the tractor and they make this little enclosed area to burn everything up in. I think that's really smart.
Then they roll over it.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's like you said earlier. I mean, these guys aren't stupid.
Yeah,
they're smart.
They're doing it right.
And we'll touch more on that towards the end because I think they make a pretty brash decision at the end of this. So and I think it's a pretty good decision too. This is where
Blair goes beep.
This is where McCready sees somebody in the helicopter run off, and we find out Blair has been trashing everything and he's completely lost it. Mm-hmm. He says, one of the things he says during all of this is that thing didn't want to be a dog, it wanted to be us. So he's really caught on to the fact that this thing is dangerous. It could be a threat to the world, and he's going to do whatever he has to do to prevent it from getting out.
So how many
Blair makes is an important part of figuring out what this thing is. Without his contribution, they likely would have not survived. Or but they don't really survive anyway. But yeah, I think he really is the one who sort of figured it out, and then unfortunately wasn't able to survive.
Does he act, crazy and shoot at everybody because he's already assimilated and wants to be left alone to make a spaceship? Or
I don't know. It's possible. It's a great theory. That's the best thing about this movie is that you can make theory. There are lots of theories.
I don't think there is a wrong theory.
Well,
I really don't.
You're right. I think this movie leaves everything so open-ended that all of this could be right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The thing that strikes me about this thing is if it is Blair, he's very passionate about what he's doing. And even though if he is assimilated at this time, and we're also going to talk about Palmer when that happens, when Palmer's time comes, if they are assimilated, they're still invoking emotion, human emotion, and acting like, and they even have memories or like, I'm going to jump ahead to.
Yeah, no, if they're not like they were just born, they can act enough like they're themselves.
Because you think about the
everything.
alien assimilates their brain and everything, and it probably takes along with it like stored memory or anything like that, so they can continue. I mean, that's how it works. It can.
But this movie makes you so paranoid that you'll even start to question. You start to question everything. You're so paranoid. You're like, well, did he do this all in a long con to trick? You know what I mean? Or there's people who think McCready is, is the Thing, and everything he does is some long confusing con to get exactly what he wants. And yeah, you as a viewer start questioning everybody, even people that are, safe.
I think it's very smart the way they play this fight between Blair and everyone else, because Blair is losing his mind. He's just firing off rounds at everybody left and right. It's great how Wilford Brimley empties the gun out and just throws it at Childs.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
Yeah, the revolver with 25 shots in it.
Yeah, he doesn't unload that. He unloads it, but Jesus, he never reloads it. And I like that it's a very realistic sort of tussle between all these people. And McCready, even though he's been drinking this whole time and but he still has a good head on his shoulders. He sends the guy to go to the rec room to grab a table. They bring the table in to block whatever, counteract whatever Blair's going to throw at them. I really like the way they play this fight scene out between them and how they have to take Blair down.
Yeah, and I remember, the first time we see McCready, he's playing chess on his computer
with a cheating bitch.
He is a thinker, cheating bitch.
I always had a problem with that watching this, because if that was the only computer and the only entertainment you had there, why would you dump your drink in the hard drive?
Hey,
it is extremely,
I do have a little point about, the computer that was talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
That is the voice of Adrienne Barbeau, John Carpenter's wife at the time.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
And John Carpenter was he was in the movie as part of the Norwegian crew that was on the video.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the guys in the Norwegian crew.
Yep.
I was like, that's pretty cool.
I like that Blair says, "Watch Clark," and we later find out that Clark was not assimilated. Yeah. So, you don't know. You can't say for sure if Blair was the. I mean, it makes sense to worry about Clark because he's the dog guy, but it's hard to say. Was Blair changed at that point or not? You don't really know.
Yeah. This thing. We'll get to the blood test scene because I want to talk about. There's going to be a little bit of talk about the blood test scene, and how I feel about some of that. They decide they're going to lock Blair up, and for good reason. He's just gone nuts.
Yeah.
And this is where they decide that they got to have some sort of a test that they can do on people. Again, we don't know much about this research facility, but they have bags of blood on hand, and
I think that's
apparently their blood.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just if they are injured,
you can give your own blood. It's kind of like if you do major surgery, they actually take your blood so they can give it back to you.
Okay.
So you don't have to go donate and stuff like that. So I guess it's their medical blood bank for, because accidents happen. There's machinery around. Somebody gets a hand, finger
and
chopped
they're in the middle
off.
of nowhere for however long.
Now,
and the blood bank has been sabotaged.
Blood everywhere.
And there are 3 suspects.
And this is where the paranoia really sinks in, because there's only 2 to 3 people who could have had access to the key. Nobody wants to fess up to the fact that they had it or didn't have it. I did find out what happened with the key. I don't know who did the blood, but
yeah, me too.
Windows has the key. And when he finds the guy who Bennings, you can audibly hear him drop something. He drops the keys to the lab. So who does it, we don't know, but we know Windows dropped the keys, and someone from there got them and destroyed the blood.
What a wonderful thing that there's only an audio cue. You don't see the keys hit the ground.
You just hear it. You just hear them hit the ground.
They have it. Yeah. It's there if you're looking for it. What a awesome thing.
But because of the whole thing, and that's when they start dividing people up. They take, the doctor, Copper, Gary, and Clark.
Copper, Gary, and Palmer are all tied together.
Well, you've also
that's later whenever they're actually doing the thing. I was talking like the original one when the whole blood bank thing's going on. Is when they start. This is when they really want to start because Gary was supposed to have the key. The doctor was the only other person, and the whole Clark thing that Blair told McCready. He said, "Okay, you 3 over here, and the rest of you over here." And then
it lends to why Windows freaks out when they find out all of this, and Windows runs off and goes and gets a gun. I mean, you can chalk that up to his paranoia, but I think in that moment,
he's worried they're going to turn.
I think in that moment he realized he was the last one with the keys, and he doesn't remember what he did with them. He dropped them. Like, I think he is at a point where he's thinking, "Holy shit, they're going to find out I was the last one with these keys. I've got to do something." This is also where I found it kind of weird, because if Blair was assimilated or wasn't assimilated at this point, why didn't he destroy or take the guns and hide them somewhere? He's got his little pistol that he shoots at people with, but he knows there's guns in the compound. Why wouldn't he have done something with those?
I don't think that Blair is assimilated.
It seems like a human decision and something he completely forgot about.
Yeah, I mean, I can't support everything, I think, with, facts, but I feel like he gets turned when he's in the shed.
Yeah, the slow thing, because like you said, just that microscopic bit takes time, like to get into the body and take over. So,
and it shows how in dire a situation they're in, because Blair is the scientist there. If anybody's going to be able to help them figure out what's going on, it's him, and he's just lost his fucking mind. And even the guy, Fuchs, says, he comes to McCready, he says, "I need Blair because I don't know how we're going to get through this without him." But it's like you said, they're smart. They lock him in the tool shed. I like that McCready, they're like, "Why don't we put him in your space, McCready?" He's like, "I don't want him in my shack. We're going to put him in the tool shed."
Yeah. Well, that's like, and then we go from Blair, because I guess Blair, but the Fuchs guy, or Fuchs, however, I mean, some guy, every time I see it, read it, it looks like it says fucks. But they go to him next. I guess he's kind of another smart, because they're relying on him to come up with the blood test now that the whole blood bank's been destroyed and everything. And then that's when the power goes out, and then you see like him get up and this ominous shadow go down the hallway real quick. And you're like, okay, now who the hell? Because McCready and him, I think, just went outside.
Now, the only person...
They're inside.
The only person...
That has to be Blair.
It has to be
or
Blair.
Thing Blair.
Yeah, it has to be Blair assimilated.
Yeah, it has to be Thing Blair. And then you have to assume Thing Blair kills Fuchs out there. And plants McCready's jacket, which is never explained. And they kind of forget about the McCready's jacket torn up, or shirt, or whatever. But that's the biggest thing in the movie, where you're just like really starting to question McCready, because like, how did that like, why would anybody? But it had to be planted by Thing Blair.
But that's the thing. But when that happens, they go out there when the power goes out, and they are outside already, because they go out to the shed to talk to Blair, and he's got that noose hanging, and they're asking him questions. This all happens right next to each other. So that's why I said I don't think that was Blair inside that went down the hallway, because this all takes place like.
Yeah, but we find out that Blair's dug tunnels under the shed. He can move around.
Yeah, because Fuchs goes outside to go see what the hell's going on, and then we don't see him anymore.
He's just burnt up next time.
And then when they go back out there, his body has been burned. It's like, did he kill himself? That's what it never really tells you how he died.
They think it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they
think that
Blair thing that kills him, and just because of process of elimination, it has to be Blair, because everyone else is accounted for.
At that point, Blair has to have assimilated, because he's putting together this ship by this time. And
McCready drops a line that says like it's been 48 hours or something like that, around that point when they're sitting around. So, when he's doing that recording, I think he says it, but. You have to think, okay, it all happens very quickly in the movie, but if you say there's been 2 days of them in the storm, they're stuck down in the storm.
I want to get to a clip here, because we're right here in this area, and I think this is one of the best parts of the movie. I didn't have a lot of clips to pull for this, because this movie is mainly a visual movie. I mean, you're getting a lot from the visuals of it, but this monologue that Kurt Russell gives here, I think, is great.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won. There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who. All right, Doc, Gary, and Clark, move over there away from the others.
So this is where he really starts to separate everybody up. Depending on what situations have unfolded thus far.
Yeah.
Who he's seen with certain people. And again, he's having to alienate the people that really could be beneficial to him. The doctor.
Right. The only doctor. Yeah.
And he even says that. He's like, you don't want to put me away, Mac. I'm the doctor. I'm going to be the one that's going to help you here. Well,
that's what the thing would say, Doc.
One thing that I found strange about this movie is the doctor has a nose ring. Okay. That's not strange in our nowadays, but this guy does not seem like the nose ring kind of guy to me. And knowing what we know about the prequel that they made to this.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that was probably a part of this movie that may have gotten written out. And it helped me with figuring something out in the end, which we'll get to as well. But I thought for some reason watching it this time that was going to come back into play somehow, that his nose ring would be gone at some point or something, but it never goes away.
I never noticed it.
Yeah, because in the prequel, they mentioned that it can't assimilate non-organic material.
Right.
That's why if you have fillings, you don't get them anymore.
Right. And Copper wouldn't lose his nose ring because he was never turned.
As we found out, he was never turned. So, I don't know if that was...
It is a great little detail, and I think you're right, Josh. I think that checks out. It feels right to me.
The storm has rolled in at this point, because I remember this is when Knowles and McCready are all outside, and we see Norris looking out the window, and he keeps holding his chest. Like there's something wrong with Norris, you know, because like we kept thinking, like we were talking about whose shadow is that, and all of a sudden, this has been how many days now, I guess, and now it's like he keeps holding his chest, like there's something wrong. And then Knowles comes back without McCready, like he lost him. He cut him loose, is what he says, because something was off. So he said, dude, I cut McCready loose. I ran back in. They're all inside, and that's when you get that nice shot of the movie. It's in the trailer, that creepy shot of them sitting there, and you start seeing that doorknob turn in the back behind him.
And
so horror.
They're gone another time jump in the movie because this all happens very quickly. But they say that McCready and Knowles were gone for 45 minutes.
And nobody could survive.
So it seems like they were just gone for a minute, but they were gone for a while. And you're really starting to question McCready at this point. You found the thing, and they all are, like Jenny said, we're learning as they're learning. So when they're suspicious of McCready, so are we, right along with them. We're like, well, wait, like
this is when the dynamite starts showing up. Cause remember, McCready breaks into the storage windows in there. He's pretty much frozen. His beard is like ice, and he's holding that big wad of dynamite. You're like, y'all come near me, or I'm blowing this place to hell.
This is the same thing with the guns. Like if they knew dynamite was there, why wouldn't Blair, if he had assimilated at this time, or even if he hadn't, why wouldn't he have done something with all of this?
Yeah. And then
I don't know. I mean, the thing doesn't necessarily want to destroy everything. It wants to escape.
Right.
So maybe it wasn't interested in destroying everything at first. It ends up shutting down.
Well, my point there is that it leaves plenty of weapons there for them to defend themselves against it.
Yeah.
But you brought up Norris having the heart issue, and we find out that this is probably the most infamous scene of this movie.
Oh yeah, dude.
The defibrillator scene.
Yeah, Dr. Copper Norris is passed out. Got him on the table, and he's doing like major CPR. Shirts open, bam, bam, and he starts pulling out the paddles. Oh,
if you notice when they start trying to give Norris mouth to mouth, he actually does have fillings in his teeth. I noticed that this time, so that kind of debunks that theory a little bit.
I think that was just
I think it was the 80s and it was the 80s and they probably weren't even thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can really only imagine seeing this for the first time. And the fact that
there's no way you see that coming.
No.
The mouth and the chest, right? I mean, you would never imagine that would.
Dude, when he pops, because he popped him the first time, nothing happened. And then the second time, you see him lean up, and then when it goes, it's like perfect timing as he leans back in. Whoa.
Yeah.
And his big, jagged, freaking rocky teeth rip his arms off.
Oh. And this is another thing where I have a question, because if it has assimilated Norris, which if I'm going off what we've seen so far, he was the first person assimilated if I'm looking at it through my point of view. And
first or second.
one of the first people to be assimilated. So he's gone this whole time. Like, the fact that he's having these heart problems or whatever it is that he's having doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It also...
Well, maybe the thing gets the same heart problem from the guy.
Maybe Norris did have a problem or something, or maybe the assimilation didn't
it like transferred to him.
Yeah, he took, because you got to think about it. If you have a disease inside you and something's going to assimilate you, it's going to has to take all that too, because it's part of your organs. So
or it could just be, well, no. I don't know. That's a good
Well, see, that's where
you come up with is right.
They've left this very open to interpretation or whatever you're going to pull from it. My question is if it's assimilating, is it overtaking your body, or is it creating a new piece of material? If we're going upon what we're seeing here with Norris, it has to assimilate and use some sort of the body function that it's assimilating.
Yeah, because they never found because then there would be a Norris body laying around.
There's no bodies.
Right. There's no body.
It absorbs into you.
Yeah.
It like melds with you or something.
Okay. So,
but we get more whippy vine effects here.
And that
totally
spurt
gnarly.
of goo that just comes out and all those things start spurting out of it.
Yeah. But when the
imagine
head attaches.
Imagine holding a big old block of dynamite and shooting a flamethrower at the same time. That's what McCready does. He's shooting a flamethrower. He's holding this thing that would just blow up the entire building. Oh, be careful, buddy. Be careful.
But whatever the thought they put into how this whole scene plays out is completely genius and really cements that this being is not just one thing. Like it, as we're going to come to find out in the blood scene, every part of this thing will be useful in some way.
Right. If you cut off its finger, the finger will grow spider legs. And
the
walk
fact
away.
that this,
you have to destroy all.
Norris's head is pulling itself loose from the body, and that whole, the makeup, everything about that thing coming down and sliding off of the table, it's all just.
Just even the part where it's stretching the skin and you like the green pustules come through the skin as it's pulling itself apart. I mean, who thought of that in 1982? This guy did. And it was freaking phenomenal. And it's still great today in 2021. It's so great. And
you get the stop motion, like we mentioned before. I don't know what you were going to say. It was bad stop motion.
Where's the stop motion here?
I think the spider legs are a little stop motion.
Nothing
growing.
Nothing about this scene bothers me.
The stop motion I feel is bad is at the end of the movie.
The end of the movie is where I feel the stop motion is a little subpar, but
see, I don't mind the stop motion.
It's very brief.
It just fits with the unearthly movement. It feels strange, so it all kind of works for me. Just in that
they don't rely on a lot of it. And that's what's good.
Yeah, I really think the spider thing is practical effects because you see how it comes out.
Yeah, when the legs come up out of it, I feel like that was either something that they built that did that, or they shot that in reverse.
In reverse, because I know the tongue thing when the head's on the ground and the tendril comes out. I think that was shot in reverse.
Yeah,
the other way.
You can tell that was a reverse shot.
Yeah, but when that thing, the legs, you can hear the legs coming out like that. You're just like, oh my God, you're as a kid. I mean, like I said, I was a younger teenager watching this, and you're like, oh my God, that's disturbing. And then the eyes come out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this part also cements something that we've been talking about a little bit, because we know that Palmer has assimilated at this point, the pot smoking guy. And in that scene, when the spider comes out, he looks over just like McCready and everybody else, and he goes, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He seems
one of the best lines in the movie.
He seems genuinely surprised by what he's looking at. But at this point, he is assimilated. So it is doing a good job of imitating and disguising itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes that gives some weight to what we're talking about with Blair.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
You know,
Yeah.
Jason, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, like, you're talking about that part. I was saying, like, if you go back after you realize Norris is a part of the thing, go back and watch the movie again and look at some of the facial expressions Norris makes. It's almost like he really wasn't human for a while. Like y'all were talking about, that was his shadow. You can kind of see like when he sits there, he kind of reacts like, oh, okay. And he walks away. It's like he was very not there.
He's probably the most underdeveloped character in this, and it's probably because he is our patient zero.
Yeah.
But that doesn't lend itself to perfectly imitating somebody. I mean, Childs even says at one point, he says, if I was a perfect assimilation, how would you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know? So a lot of the things that I thought I could poke holes in this movie about, which there's still a few more to come, we're really kind of talking through where it's all plausible. And they leave it in a sense to where you really could make a case for anything that's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, they don't establish strict rules about everything enough to where you can rule anything out.
Yeah.
How come in movies whenever they take blood or somebody has to give blood or something, they just cut the shit out of themselves?
On their hands. Always on their hands.
Yeah, not only that, it's on my notes too. They don't just go prick. No, it's like, let me grab a Bowie knife and let's shred my hand to share blood.
No. I mean, you're going to need 10 stitches after that. You just needed a few drops of blood, bud.
God.
Carving your thumb up.
You know how sharp, I mean, a scalpel is sharp. I mean, it's meant to just shut, and they're just like, and I'm like, dude, you just cut down to the bone on his finger.
Yeah. Well, they do that in The Thing. Or
yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
They do, in fact. Thank you. No, they do that in
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? When they cut them, they do the blood, thing, the blood pact or whatever, and they carve the shit out of their hands.
It's every movie.
Glass,
every movie.
It's every movie.
Fuck hands.
Yeah, we're just gonna cut the
Slice
whole.
them up.
Matter of fact, just start cutting the whole finger off. Here you go.
Yeah, I don't need my thumb for the rest of the film.
Not at all.
Like, a thumb is not terribly important to me grabbing things or doing anything.
I mean, I would feel a little woozy after the amount of blood. Yeah.
Cut your arm or your knee or something. Why your fingertips?
The blood scene is another big one that I do want to talk about, but we skipped over one thing I want to bring up real quick, and that's after the defibrillator stuff goes down, they've seen and McCready is still like, I'm going to tie you guys up. We're going to do this test. And this is where Clark is kind of trying to play McCready a little bit. And McCready, Childs is even like, you're not going to tie me up. And he's like, well, I'm going to have to shoot you. And this is the classic scene you'll see in movies where people have to put their money where their mouth is and can't follow through on it. But when Clark goes for McCready fucking shoots him. And
he was lunging at him with a scalpel. I mean, they give McCready shit like, you're a murderer now, but
I like that ambiguity is there until you get to the blood scene, and then that sparks a whole new controversy. Childs even says it to him. He's like, oh, so Clark was a human, so that makes you a murderer.
You're right.
It makes a whole lot of good argument for all of this.
Well, it also reminds you that in this paranoia, they're going to make mistakes. Yeah. You're going to think that not just will you be fooled that the thing is a person, but you'll confuse people for the thing as well.
Now, here is where I want to bring up my big key issue. MacReady makes his case for just one cell of this is trying to protect itself. It wants to survive. They go through this blood test, and we get to the point where he burns the blood, and we find out that Palmer is assimilated.
Yeah, the jumps out of the petri dish.
In his logic of what they're talking about, wouldn't them simply cutting his thumb make him react like that? You're attacking the body that he's inhabiting, just like you're attacking the blood that you're trying to test. So if you cut his finger, it's point. Like they kind of graze over that. If there's one thing about this movie they glaze over, I think it's that, because it's the same. It's the same sort of scenario.
Here's my answer. You have to think of the whole. So at the time when they cut his thumb, that's one small part of the whole. But once the blood is removed, now the blood is the whole, and it's its own thing. And it's being burned.
So he's attacking a greater portion of it at that point.
I think it, in the same way that the other guys didn't feel threatened when, if you get your thumb cut, you're not as threatened as if somebody takes a giant metal rod, burning rod, and jams it into you like the blood gets. The blood was like threatened. It was more of a threat. And maybe the blood doesn't have the brain, so it's more of like a, instinctive reaction kind of thing. I don't know. I'm reaching, but
I see the argument there, but I think I have an argument for that. It's very glossed over, and that's the one thing I kind of have an issue about with it. Now, this scene is amazing. And it builds tension like nobody's business.
Oh, God. I love just every time he takes that thing and starts, it's like that tension is building. He starts heating up that wire again, and you're just like, who's going to be?
And they try to throw you off because when Windows gives him his blood and kind of walks away.
He has that look. He starts looking down.
Like you start to get the feeling that Windows is probably bad news.
I do like that every time they do the thing, he's got another person standing next to him.
Yeah.
Okay, you can come over by me now. You can come over. You're good. And and it's also great when Palmer starts to turn and they're all tied.
Yeah.
He's shaking in the chair.
It's just like, get me out of here. Get me out of here. I mean, what a weird thing to be like all tied together. They're all on the couch together.
But the Palmer change, the whole change, that whole special effect, like we're going to keep talking about this till the end of the movie. Just like when his face like melts and it pulls apart, and then the mouth thing comes, and he grabs
when his head splits open and becomes a mouth.
Yeah, and it grabs Windows by the head. That's my part. You're talking about the stop motion. That shot of when he's got Windows flopping by the legs.
The dummy, yeah.
I'm like, wow, guys. I think what they spent was like 1.5 million on special effects, where they only started out with a budget of 200,000, but we're just going to have some floppy legs in this part.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, come on, y'all done so great.
Yeah. The dummy
does not look great, but it's great.
But you know what does look great is after they torch it, that firewalk.
Oh yeah.
When it busts through the wall out into the snow.
Yeah. Talking about fire effects, we talked about it with Halloween 2.
Yeah.
This is another great.
But it's great that MacReady
firewalk. And he's still got the big split head as well.
And it's great that MacReady, has football skills and is able to hit him right dead center with that dynamite. And blow him up.
And then they go inside, and you can always the gooey. It's like Windows is covered in that goo, like that dog was. And you can hear them making that noise like in the corner, and then they torch his ass on the corner too. But I have one thing about the little comment that you guys are going back and forth about the whole thing. When he cut his finger, that's one thing. But see, what is the one thing that the Thing has been hurt by through the whole movie? Fire. And that hot needle going into that blood has that reaction other than a knife cut, because it does know fire hurts it. It can kill it. Heat.
Fire bad. beer good.
That is the most solid reasoning I've got behind this now. Yeah.
Good job,
so.
Jason.
That's what I was like, I got something, guys. Let me interject. I am here today.
But
I want to argue. But that's my thing is like
Yeah.
a slice on the finger is nothing compared to it saying, oh my God, this thing's killing me with heat and fire. I need to react.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, if you stab it, it's not going to die. If you burn it, it's going to die.
Yeah.
So okay, that clears up my
look
question.
there. I'm glad I'm here today,
Good.
guys. Yeah.
But
Good job, Jason.
What Eric just brought up is where we do get the little interject of comedy finally in this movie is when they do the blood test, and each time one's negative, they've got a flamethrower on, and they're standing beside McCready.
For the next test, yeah.
But that's going to get us into a bigger quote.
You're gonna need a bigger quote.
Do you want a tagline? Can I do a tagline?
Give us some taglines, Jason. You haven't been here to do them.
Oh, actually, there was only one that I found for this movie. It's the nice, the poster with the parka guy and all that stuff like that. But the tagline for the thing was, "Man is the warmest place to hide."
I like that. Yeah, that's a
That
good
is
one.
the only, and it's a good one.
The other poster said the ultimate in alien terror, which I think maybe playing off Alien
Maybe.
a little bit.
Trying to
saying, hey, you like Alien, you'll
trying
like
to
this.
steal
And
a
they were
little
right.
bit of stuff from Alien there. But yeah, the quote. Are you talking about Gary's quote?
Yep, go for it.
Oh, dude, I wrote the whole thing down. Let's see.
It is a good one.
Somebody knows. All right. Well, Gary gets his test. He's good. But I love how he says it. He's just like, I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch. But I just love how he starts out. It's just like I'm talking to you guys. You guys are great. Now fucking untie me.
Yeah.
They've been giving him. He's like the leader of this base, and they have been giving him nothing but shit this entire time. No respect.
He has
for this
a moment
dude.
in this though that I do really like, and that's when Windows freaks out and goes for the guns. He's going to shoot Windows, and they talk him down.
That's exactly what. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Well, he at that moment he realizes, well, maybe you would all feel safer if and he hands over his gun. And you still get your dilemma between McCready and Childs, because Childs wants to take over, and that's when McCready says maybe someone a little more mild tempered.
So what you got for quotes? What you got?
Well, I've got one. I like after what's his name? Bennings was shot, and he asked Knowles to turn his music down. He says, "I'm trying to get some sleep. I was shot today." I think it's a fair.
And I like
fair.
Knowles. He goes, "All right," and he goes over to the boombox and puts his finger by the volume, but doesn't touch it, and it just goes away.
It's just like my damn kids when I tell them to turn their music down. Okay, you did not turn that down.
I have one. It's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
What do you got, Josh?
I like when Blair's freaking out and he's just, that thing wanted to be us. He's having his freak out moment. I also like Childs. I cannot believe any of this voodoo bullshit. Can you believe any of this voodoo bullshit, Blair?
I got another one. I got one from Palmer, our weed smoker, when they're sitting there chilling and they're talking about the aliens and stuff. And he says, "Chariots of the gods, man. They practically own South America."
He is our comic relief in this for sure. Even when they're talking about flying out to the spaceship, and he's like, "I would do it," but like he's
subtle though.
Yeah,
very subtle.
Oh, and there's a quote toward the end of the movie, and I like it because it's quick and subtle. And fuck you too.
Good one. I think it's Fuchs asks to speak with McCready outside, and McCready says it's 40 below outside.
He says that, and that's when he goes, "I'd rather," or he goes, "I just want to go up to my shack and get drunk." Like he's just been drunk the whole time.
After they subdue Blair,
Blair
says, "I don't know who to trust," and McCready says, "I know what you mean, Blair."
He said if you're gonna trust in the Lord.
Maybe you should trust in the Lord.
Lord.
I wrote down fuck you too. That's a good one. I love the I love the closing line of the movie. I mean, we're skipping ahead to it, but I mean, why don't we just sit here for a while, see what happens? You know, I like that.
Yep. I know I'm human, I think is a great line because all his logic is based on that is based on that fact. He knows he's human. So from that point on, he can make other assumptions or, you know, conclusions. But while we're watching it, you don't know if he's human. So can you trust his logic at all? You can't. And that's the beauty of it. And then I've got another one. You got to be fucking kidding. Obviously.
that was a good one.
Oh, generator's gone. Any way we can fix it?
Gone.
It's gone.
And the way he says it too, he's like, "It's gone." McCree.
Like it ain't here. It's gone.
Anybody got anything else?
I think that's it. I think.
Oh well, I like maybe we'll just warm things up.
Yeah,
around
that's
here.
good.
It's a good McCready line.
They've proven, or at least they think they've proven, that the blood test works. So they're going to go out and give it to Blair, and they leave Childs in the compound to watch over things. And they tell him, if he tries to come in here without us, torch him. They're no bullshit at this point. They get out there, and this is when they discover that Blair's a rabbit and has been tunneling underneath the tool shed. That's one thing about the movie that does get me, is the sense of time that goes by, because when you see them get out there and find this makeshift spaceship that he's been building, I'm already thinking there's no way he's had time to do all of this.
But it's been a couple days.
Exactly. It's been a couple days and he's not human. I mean, you see later him going under in a Tremors style effect where he's going under the floor.
God damn, you guys just
ground.
keep pointing out shit that makes sense.
Yeah.
Dude,
It's
do
like
your
you watched
homework.
the movie.
Have you seen the movie?
He's a graboid, man. He just goes up underground and just digs right through all the snow, no problem. I mean,
well, that would be my question: is can it shapeshift? Like, can it take on the form of Blair and what it turns into later?
I think it can go back and forth.
Because I don't think
I think it can. We see Palmer once he knows he's been outed. He changes right there. Only because he knows he can't hide.
Because I don't see Mr. Diabetes just tunneling through the snow. Now that big ass creature, I can see that.
It's definitely in a different form when it's tunneling.
It can turn.
Maybe in another universe, it stopped a place with like gophers the size of elephants, and he just dug through the freaking snow. I don't know
exactly what DNA has been gathered from other planets. The same planet the graboids come from.
Yeah, something like that. But they go down and we find a little spaceship that he's built, which it ties into. I think it ties actually back into the like underground part of the camp. But because I mean that's how he was getting inside, was going through here and then going into the basement area.
Right. He's been in and out of the shed. Yeah. I think when you see the noose, I think maybe that noose was put there by the real Blair. Yeah. Perhaps thinking, all is lost, and then he ends up getting turned, and then it's sitting there unused. I don't know. It's kind of how I see it.
It's funny because if we try to pinpoint the moment when Blair was infected, if it was the pencil that we saw, which could or could not be it, if it's that little of touch that it had, maybe that takes a lot more time, as opposed to like Bennings, who it was just all wrapped up in him and had him right away. Like a big portion, like a big, part of the blood that was seeping out of that thing could have made a lot more damage than,
you think about it like a virus, like what I kind of just went through. It takes time to gestate, because you're talking about microscopic particles that just touched his face. Yeah. It goes into your body. It gestates like a virus and slowly takes over organ by organ, but slowly. That's why maybe it was messing with Blair's mind. But until it takes over the brain, he's still Blair.
Yeah.
But that could work if the pencil is how he got it, but if it's not how he got it, then, every scenario might be like Bennings. We just don't see it.
It's true.
They found the undies in the trash. So, that's probably Palmer, happened off screen. Bennings is the only one that happened on screen, but Blair might have happened off screen as well in the shed. So it's hard to say. You can't say for sure, but they realize here that, and then the power goes out in the whole base. So they realize
Null sees Childs run out of the compound. The lights have gone out.
Yes.
And Childs has run out of the compound. And this is where McCready makes his stance. And he's like, we're not leaving here, guys. And the fact that they bring that up and that these guys have made peace with the fact that they're not going to leave here.
Yeah.
So we need to do whatever we can to make this thing not able to leave.
They're so pragmatic.
Yeah.
This is 1982 in an Arctic base. You have to know when you go out to that Arctic base,
Right.
you may not come back.
Oh, yeah.
These guys are, adventurous dudes in the first place to even be out here.
Yeah, because that's what McCready's saying. Like in 6 hours, it's going to be 100 below.
Yeah,
and he says the thing wants to freeze and wait for the rescue team for spring because it knows it can't escape. All of its escape routes have been done, but it knows if it gets frozen, somebody's going to come.
Right,
and that's what it's trying to do. So that's why McCready says, "Well, screw it, we're going to warm things up a little bit around here. I got 80 crates of dynamite." over here and 5,000 road flares and 80 gallons of Chevron kerosene over here.
The image of them driving the tractor into the building and then taking the axe and breaking the gas tank open and then going room to room and just throwing dynamite in. It's a great scene, and it hammers home just how fucked these guys are, but they're willing to do what they've got to do.
Yeah.
I really love the Looney Tunes detonator that McCready has for the dynamite.
Because there's those are real. I mean,
they are.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Jason, what in this movie did you try? Did you try to detonate dynamite?
Well, and not dynamite, but remember, I was in the Air Force in EOD, and I played with explosives every day. So I have blown up lots of C4 and played with dynamite. So I know how that little plunger works.
See,
so I have done that in real life, but I was getting paid to do it.
Jason was out on the Die Hard episode, and we were wondering how he detonated C4. Jason could have told us how he detonated the C4 in Die Hard.
Do you know that you can actually use C4 to cook with? You can put a skillet on it, and the chemical reactions creates heat.
Wow.
No,
we never tried it. That's what one of our teachers taught us, and he's also was missing like 2 pieces of his right hand. That's why I got into.
That's why he's teaching.
Exactly. You start realizing when I was in EOD that you're shaking people's hands and they're missing that part of the finger and this or hand. Because some of them it was an accident, some of them it was during wartime, and that sucked. But yeah, it is scary. But yeah, that plunger is actually real. I mean, that's what they used to use back in the day to clear stuff when they were like doing railroad or building tunnels. You set your dynamite out there, you had your line. That's all it was is a detonator just to make a connection. But it's very Looney Tunes. I mean, we all grew up watching Wile E. Coyote do it to Roadrunner, like every episode, or Bugs Bunny to Elmer Fudd. So, but yeah,
we get another great effect here when Blair melts his hand into Gary's face.
Yes.
Yeah, it lingers on it for a good moment, and then it cuts away, and then it cuts back to him dragging him away with his arm becoming part of his face.
Yeah.
And like we're talking about it, he sort of like melts into things and like absorbs. It's not really like you say, you're not having like a dead body and then there's a new version of so and so. And him dragging the body there like that is so creepy too. It reminds me of like a slasher movie or like a where the killer is just dragging the body behind him.
This movie does not have a traditional third act, in my opinion. Usually in a movie, you're getting your first, second, third act. The third act is going to be the big action-packed finale of what's going to happen. All this seems to boil down to one instance down in this basement, and that's it. It's funny because the whole first 2/3 of this movie are so, that's what I remember the most. I always have a hard time remembering the ending of this movie because... And I think this time what cemented it for me is because it's so fast.
Yeah, there's not some big epic showdown. It does happen pretty quick, but I mean, it does feature some of the biggest effects.
Oh yeah,
literally the biggest.
You've got explosions, and then you've got that tremor effect of the guy coming at him, and you get a pretty cool somersault dive from Kurt Russell. I mean, what more do you want? But I agree. I mean, this movie, when you think this movie, you think more about
yeah,
it's not so much the end. I think the same is kind of true with Alien for me.
A little bit, yeah.
The ending of Alien, she ejects it from the thing, and it's suspenseful, it's fun, but that's not what I really think about when I think about how much I love Alien. It's not really that end scene.
But what do you got here, Jason?
Well, what was like, all right, we've seen everybody when they die. You see a body, or they turn into something. Everything. The only person you never see is what happens to Knowles.
We're supposed to assume that it just engulfed him, I think.
But I watched the movie and I'm like, and he just walks away. And that's what you figure. I mean, in your head, he's been absorbed by the big monster at that point in time. But you never see it. But everybody else does. I mean, they get to see. Well, what I had read for my spare notes is that I guess they had shot more scenes in the movie, but due to some budget stuff like that, they had to cut his scene of what happened. They didn't say what was supposed to happen to him as far as what was in the storyboard, but they cut his scene of what really happened to him when he walked away. So that's why it's not there. So that was actually just a budget cut of what happened to him, because I guess something.
All you really needed for that was when you get the reveal,
the monster.
It comes to
you give us a little piece of Null's face on the side of it. That's all you needed to do.
Yeah.
To know that he had
been, dude, that freaking dog
absorbed
face that comes out of that is another very memorable shot of this whole movie, is just
slimy dog,
big slimy dog coming up. But I do agree with
you, slimy dog.
But I do agree with you. I mean, literally, we go from the whole plunger thing not working, Null walks away, and all of a sudden the floor, the whole trimmers thing goes. It pops up. We get our stop motion that Josh was talking about, of it sitting there and making these weird noises, and the dog comes, and then it's over. I mean, Dynamite.
Yeah, fuck you too. And that's,
fuck you too. And I'm like, wow, did we run out of time? And we just like, hey, Kurt, we need to think of something really cool. Hey, how about I just throw a stick of dynamite and say, fuck you too, into the movie. I love it. Got it. Cut.
I don't really have a problem with it at all. It's definitely not traditional, but there's a lot about this movie that's not. I mean, it's a very bleak movie, and I'm sure there weren't a lot of movies that ended this way back in '82.
Well, I think that's probably where some of the critical hate came
probably
from, and we've had a lot more movies that are more bleak or more challenging.
Nowadays, yeah, for sure. But
I mean, you mentioned Ex Machina. I mean, very similar in the sense. I think more important in this film than the blowing up the monster in the cave is what happens afterwards. That where he walks out and he encounters Childs. That's the part I think of more when I think of the end of the thing. It's not really so much blowing up Blair in the mine. It's really more that last moment.
I agree. I agree with you there. And this is probably the scene that's most talked about and theorized is, you still have Childs and McCready here.
Right. And are either of them the thing? Are both of them the things? Is McCready the thing?
One theory that I saw says that when Childs shows up with the flamethrower, he's not wearing the same clothes he was wearing before.
There's a few things
I think that's a little like because he's covered in snow. He could still be wearing the same clothes and they're going to look different because he's covered in snow. If we're playing upon the logic of the prequel that's set up where it can't assimilate objects, then Childs is not a thing because he's wearing an earring. And I looked for it. I saw him.
I don't think we can trust a prequel that was made
But again, I mean, this also goes back to the thing with the doctor, Dr. Copper. I mean, he's wearing, it was never established that he was actually one of these creatures. So that would be my argument for Childs, is if we're playing upon that logic, he has an earring in his ear, so that throws that out the window. But if we
they tested Copper's blood.
No, I'm saying they did. We never got, we somewhat proved that he wasn't a.
They don't establish that role.
Yeah. Right.
Movie,
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, that's.
I've got a couple of things on the ending here. One theory is that MacReady has a bottle of like the kerosene. It's not, because he had a bunch of Molotovs before. So when he hands Childs the drink and Childs drinks it as the thing, he wouldn't know that that's what whiskey.
Yeah.
He just pretends to drink
because
it,
he does smile. You can see MacReady smile,
and MacReady kind of chuckles after that, like, "Oh, I busted you." You know what I mean? Which I love that theory.
That's
I don't
cool
know
theory.
how true it is, but there was another thing. Dean Cundy, who does a great job on this as always, has said in an interview that they did eye lighting for people that were human and no eye lights for people that weren't. So, and in that scene, and if that checks out, like throughout the film, if somebody's the thing, their eyes are dark. If somebody's human, they've got, glints in their eyes.
It's a Blade Runner thing. I gotta go back and watch this movie again.
It's so funny because Blade Runner came out the same day, and there's all these theories that Blade Runner has that shit in it too. There's also the Inception theory of Leo in that movie. If he's wearing a wedding ring, he's in a dream. If he's not wearing a wedding ring, he's not.
This checks out.
Which checks out. We actually did that. But
but in that scene, Child's eyes are dark, and MacReady has glints in his eyes. So that supports the fact that Childs is.
It also
and MacReady. I like the idea that MacReady has one last trick up his sleeve and hands him the Molotov.
But during our conversation about this thing imitating people and being a perfect replica or whatever, and as Palmer was putting his emotions out there, when we know for a fact he was a creature, is all of this MacReady assimilated, freezing himself in the snow because he thinks he's the only one left.
Right. That's another theory that MacReady,
and he would be doing the same, protecting himself, making a case for himself, defending what he is. Like, it is so open to interpretation because it could be MacReady, it could be him. There's
another thing. There's another thing about that Child's. You can't see Child's breath in that final scene. You can see MacReady's breath. In the cold, and Child's breath doesn't show up.
Which is not really something that I think they established in any of the other scenes with.
Other than the thing doesn't like warmth, doesn't like fire and that kind of stuff. And is fine being cold. The thing would have been, as Child's walking around the cold, just being cold, doesn't care. Whereas MacReady is a warm-blooded.
Yeah, because the thing knows it can freeze, but if it's found, it can reanimate.
Right.
So, but it knows a human. If you freeze, you're dead. So
there's also the idea that, we keep talking about, there's like multiple things, right? Mm-hmm. When it gets split and there's multiple things, like, are they necessarily in cahoots? You could have multiple things that aren't.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the case that a lot of people make for MacReady, is the whole showdown with the big bad at the end, and the fuck you too is like he destroys one of them. Why would it be destroying one of its own? But we don't establish that these things work together. They're completely like defending their own well-being. So,
which is why Childs and MacReady could arguably both be things
True.
At the end. I don't know. I liked, for me, what makes me the happiest is MacReady is the kerosene in the bottle theory, and the Childs is the bad guy. Of course, like MacReady says, we're not in any position to do anything about it, know. So,
well,
even if Childs is the thing and McCready's arguing.
But I mean, Childs does have a flamethrower. If he is one of them, he could potentially just roast McCready up, and he'd be the only one left. But
right. I mean, but again, that's kind of the line. He says, "Well, I can't do anything to you anyway." So Childs like, "All right." That's
really the genius in this movie is we could sit here and theorize and talk for 2 more hours and probably still come up with completely different answers to what we're talking about.
Well, either way, without any of the theories, like you were just watching this movie in 1982, and you think back to all the movies back then, the main character kills the monster, end of the story, it's over, yay, happy, go lucky. But in 1982, without even all those things, these 2 guys are going to die. They are left there. It is bleak, very.
We are left with the same score we opened with, with a compound burning in the background, and
it ends on a bad note. Like they're gonna die. So it isn't like Arnold killing the Predator or Sigourney Weaver throwing the alien out of the airlock. No, these guys are dead.
Yeah.
They're going to die right here. So I mean, that was a very
or they're gonna freeze and take over the world in some other way.
Yes.
No, we don't need a sequel necessarily, but I wouldn't mind another movie that deals with the thing.
Honestly,
maybe in a different location or something like that. I mean, the prequel is actually good. Yeah. Like crazy for a prequel that far after the fact to actually be serviceable. I know it's got bad CGI.
The fact that they
story-wise and performances and stuff, that's a good watch. I actually feel like watching it now after watching the original.
Yeah, I like that they took the time and the effort to actually show you the blueprint of where you're going to go in the movie that we just watched.
It's a great concept for the movie because all that stuff is established in this movie. And
they do leave some things open in that one that we don't discover in this one. Like at the end of that one, Mary Elizabeth Winstead sets what's his face on fire in the snowcat by the ship. Mm-hmm. And when they go to the ship in this movie, you don't see any of that. Like none of that's there.
Or it's covered in no. Well, it depends on if he had a snowstorm. It could be covered in snow.
Possibly.
It does. You get.
But the thing about this movie and the thing about this movie being so highly regarded is the creature effects and the practical effects in it. And what really hurt the prequel is the fact that they relied on the CGI. I love that
as did a lot of movies in that.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that they give you the melding of those 2 people, and then we see it in this movie where you see the 2 heads that have melted together.
There's lots of nice Easter eggs and connections and things like that. It's fun to watch as a fan.
It's fun to go back and watch when you watch the prequel and try to remember all the stuff you saw McCready and Dr. Copper look at. And when it happened in the prequel, so, oh, look, there's the axe. Oh, there's that. Oh, there's that. That it's kind of cool to do that, like I said, but the CGI it, took the movie from what it could be to it destroyed it.
Definitely.
So
that's unfortunate.
So what we got, Josh?
There's no question here. This is a buy it. There's no rent or forget it for this. I mean, if you are a fan of movies, there's no reason you shouldn't have this movie.
Oh yeah.
And this is my favorite John Carpenter, for the record, if that wasn't obvious. But
I wonder what mine is.
He never huh? Oh. Yeah, I know. You guys have
I would still have to put Halloween above this I've seen it a lot more. I love the fact that I have to think about this movie so much, but I also love that I don't have to think about Halloween this much.
It's a much different movie. And if you want to talk influence, obviously Halloween is more influential.
If I were going to rate John Carpenter movies, it would be Halloween and then The Thing, for sure. I mean, it's
what's that third spot then? That's an interesting. Who gets the third spot?
Probably Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble, just for comedies.
I mean, this could be a whole show in itself, honestly.
Let's just rank John Carpenter movies.
I love Christine. Yeah. I love In the Mouth of Madness.
I love In the Mouth of Madness.
I kind of
Prince of Darkness.
I kind of defend Ghost of Mars.
Don't you?
Get out of here. It's fun to watch because I love Carpenter, but no.
I think it's a fun watch, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah, but In the Mouth of Madness is
Prince of Darkness.
Head and shoulders.
Dude, Prince of Darkness, that's a thinker.
I'm not as high up on Prince of Darkness as a lot of people are, but I do like it, and it's just not one that I've seen a lot. I literally hadn't seen Prince of Darkness up until about 4 or 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. Like not that long ago.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13.
17, 13, 18 years ago.
Oh, I remember again seeing it as a
Time
young
is a
teenager,
construct.
and it was just like that movie made no sense to me as a kid. It took me to being an adult in my upper 20s to watch this movie and kind of get an idea of Prince of Darkness.
All the reason why I would probably love it now is
Yeah.
because it's so ambiguous and you don't know. I mean, we'll eventually talk about it on this show for sure. And
Yeah.
it's definitely not his worst.
We won't get
No.
The Ward.
No, certainly not.
But let's get some good, bad, the ugly.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
For me, the good is obviously creature effects, the paranoia, the setting, the dogs, the ambiguity. I mean, all that stuff.
That's Josh's word of this episode.
What?
Ambiguity.
Ambiguity.
Dogs.
If I'm picking something bad or ugly for this movie, it's windows in the mouth of Palmer. Slinging them around. That dummy slinging around looks pretty bad and it's pretty ugly. So that would be it for me. How about you, Jenny?
Obviously, the practical effects are just phenomenal. Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Understated, but he's.
Let me have this for a moment. Kurt Russell looks better in this movie every time I see this movie. Because the first time I saw Kurt Russell was Overboard. I'm pretty sure. Clean shaven,
Mullet.
And he was clean shaven for a good period of like the 80s, 90s.
Oh, yeah.
So when I finally saw this movie, I was like, well, hey now, Kurt Russell, where you been hiding?
He's got the long hair.
Jenny is thirsty
the
for
beard.
so many dudes in her movies.
Yeah.
His blue eyes really pop in this too.
And he's just great. I love the character. I love how he takes charge. No bullshit. Just like we're burning these dudes,
Shoots what's his face.
Yeah,
in the head.
he's just the badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, McCready's amazing. Yeah.
And his hat.
The hat's great. Bad, if I had to say anything, I just don't like seeing dogs hurt in movies. And the effects are so good that you could buy that it's actually a dog being hurt in these movies. So it's hard for me to watch that part, even though it is amazing.
Yeah, that one scene where Blair killed the dogs with the dog with his head cut off with the axe.
Yeah.
That looked so real.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Jason, what's your stuff?
Well, let's see. We're gonna go for a 3 for here. The practical and all the special effects, other than the stop motion, in fantastic. It's what makes this movie what it is. I mean, the story is great. The bleak setting, like you just almost get from the very beginning, this is not going to turn out well. I mean, it's going to be bad. My ugly is just the way the movie was originally perceived in 1982 that you read about, how the worst movie ever made. It's just horrible because they're comparing it to the goody two-shoe E.T. movies and stuff like that. This movie is a classic. It is got a severe, everybody follows this movie. You got people nowadays who make movies who are directors and special effects guys that this movie started them on their path. But how in 1982 they were so close-minded that this movie was the most horrible movie ever made. It's too over the top, too gory. So that's my ugly.
I have one more thing just to interject. It's not necessarily a bad, but this movie makes me cold.
I think that's part of the point.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. Yeah,
and it is cold right now.
Certain movies.
I just don't want you to be confused, but it's actually cold. May not be the movie that makes you feel that.
But there are certain movies that just make you cold when you watch them. It doesn't matter what the weather is. Fargo is another
nobody's
one.
Comfortable in this
like,
movie. Yeah.
Always, I'm freezing when I'm watching that movie. It just looks miserable. That's it.
Agreed.
Eric?
I got good, bad, and the ugly. Good, bad, and the ugly. Good is everything. Script, direction, score, performances, effects, all of it. Bad is the computer simulation.
Yeah.
And ugly is
it's
the
so
monster
long
super
too.
ugly.
Like, couldn't they have sped that shit up?
It's the slowest asteroids game ever. Wait, what'd you say was your ugly?
Yeah,
Josh
what
cut
was
you off.
Just the monster's ugly.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, the monster's pretty fucking.
It's really ugly.
It's just ugly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's ugly.
UGLY. You don't need no alibi.
In a good way.
You ugly. You ugly.
There's Jenny's cheerleader coming out there.
All right, we're gonna do this real quick.
Talk kills.
Oh shit.
I didn't know we were doing this.
I was not prepared for this.
I was not prepared for it either. I didn't know. I've been gone.
But I already know.
Well,
I already know. I'm good.
I mean, there's not a ton to talk about. I mean, everybody dies in this movie, but I mean, I would assume that the defibrillator scene is probably everybody's. I mean, it's got the most iconic stuff in it, but if I were picking something in this that stands out to me, it would be Blair and the guy at the end with the fingers in the face.
Oh, Gary's face.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the visual of that. I love the effects or the makeup they use. And then when he starts dragging the body away, I love that. Love it. So I kind of sprung this on everybody, but
yeah, and I guess I'm a basic bitch.
I was about to say, yo, basic bitch.
I like the defibrillator kill.
Yeah, that's great.
It's just unexpected. There's no way you could see that coming. And it's gory and it's gnarly and it's everything this movie is. So
Well, I'm not going to be a basic bitch like Eric over here. I'm going to go with the dog scene at the beginning when the dog kills the other dogs, because as a kid watching this movie, that was the one that scarred me the most, because it's dogs being killed. It's horrible. So not fun. So
Jenny.
Jenny?
She wasn't quite prepared, but.
Well, it was my idea to do top practical effects, and you said it's the whole movie. But basically,
why don't you give us your favorite practical?
There you go, Jenny. Top killer practical effects.
There you go.
I do really like the finger in the face scene. It's just, it looks great.
Real.
Like you really believe that he has pushed his fingers into this guy's skin.
It's not even really what you would expect.
No, and I really like that. But like as far as a kill goes, and this might be unexpected, when they torch Bennings, like
oh yeah,
just because it's the first time you're really seeing like the potential of what this thing can be.
Yeah,
and he's got those creepy fingers, and then that sound. It's just. And then he's like, no, fuck this. You gone.
You out of here.
Nope.
How did you order your Bennings? Medium well or well done?
Crispy.
Extra crispy, please.
So John Carpenter's The Thing, guys. That was a fun conversation.
We did it.
I'm glad we talked about this.
It was. It's a great movie. It's great.
Yeah, this is a little rough on my brain for my first show back. I'm like, oh you guys are really making me think here. But I'm glad, Josh, I helped you. I'm glad I helped Josh with the whole blood scene. And
honestly, like
figured that out.
There's a particular moment in my notes where I wrote down, if you look, there are glaring issues with this movie. And by the time we got to that note, I was like, pretty much all my issues are plausible.
That's all it took.
Yeah,
I'm glad I'm back, guys. I did my job. I'm here.
That's going to do it for this episode of VHS Files. We will be back next week, and I believe we are going to be talking Tremors.
Yes.
We've been wanting to talk about this one for a while, and we've kind of been putting it off because I was waiting on my 4K Arrow edition to come in, but I got it now, so let's do it.
Nice 4K Arrow edition.
I'm so much better than you, man. I'm so extra.
I have the basic bitch Blu-ray edition.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you had the DVD.
I got that shit on VHS.
That would be appropriate for this show.
I think I actually do. Or maybe. I don't know.
We brought up in the Die Hard episode, we wanted to start doing some more fun ways of picking our movies. Unfortunately, due to Jenny and I's situation, we'll be moving pretty soon. So we don't have a lot of access to most of our movies now. All of our movies
are in storage.
So if we can't get it on streaming, or I didn't pull it out of what we didn't pack, it's going to be tough to do. So we've got a handful of stuff that we've got a list of movies that we've all kind of compiled together, and we're going to start picking from those, and we should be doing those here coming up. But yeah, I mean, we decided that Tremors was a good one to go next week, and we're going to do that. And then once we get a little more settled and get into our new place, we'll start doing some fun things with picking the movies for the week and that good stuff. But come back next week and you'll hear us talk about Kevin Bacon and Tremors.
Yeah.
Bacon. The Baconator.
Baconator.
God,
Double.
I want to go to Wendy's now.
Nah, I'm good. Well, until next time, everybody, be kind, rewind. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Fuck up. Goodbye.
It's over. You've been listening to the VHS Files Podcast.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe and drop us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcast.
It was fun.
Send your questions, comments, and movie suggestions to vhsfilespodcast@gmail.com.
You sick fucks. You've seen one too many movies.
Don't you blame the movies!
Follow us on all social media outlets at VHS Files Podcast.
Movies don't create psychos.
Check out our YouTube channel for more content.
Movies make psychos more creative.
Thanks for listening.
The good vibrations.
I'm fucking done, y'all.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Jarpender.
This is the second time it's done this shit to me.
We're having technical difficulties, folks.
Diabetes.
It assimilated to
Yeah, the Wolf of Brimley cat.